want to unpack an assumption that's inherent in something that was said earlier, which is that it's not all about looks, that when you talked about going to have female friends, the creepy factor of people approaching requires some social skills you may not have as a young person, and that you need to be around other people to figure it out. You talk a lot about humor. You talk a lot about also being nice, and that it isn't about negging and creating a persona that, is something other than who you are, right? If you're not a 10 out of 10 looks wise, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to find someone who is also that you find attractive and that you have a good connection with.
There's a lot of research on sexual attraction, and there are all the studies they're in different order, but they all point to the same three things of why a woman finds a man sexually attractive. First is, and we don't like to talk about it, but it's true, it's signaling resource. Okay, so you show up with a Range Rover and a Panerai, women like that's the bad news. The good news is it's signaling. In other words, you don't need to have that now. You have your act together. If you're the guy that says, I got to leave, I got to be up in the morning, I got things going on, you're responsible. Women don't like it's not that women like big muscles. What they like is it indicates you're competent and you can show up and you're disciplined. If you're broke, but you're at MIT and you're figuring out algorithms for hedge funds, responsible and nice and can show up with a clean shirt, you're signaling future resources. This guy has his act together. I was in ZBT, which was kind of the Jewish fraternity at UCLA. I remember, this is anecdotal, but I thought it was pretty telling. Something called Little Sister Rush, where women would show up and say, I want to hang out with these guys. I remember the Little Sister chairman showing me the list of all the women who showed up for Little Sister Rush, and a disproportionate number of women were seniors versus freshmen. And I'm like, I don't get it. Why do the young women not like us and the seniors do? And it goes, because we're Jews. And the freshmen are going for the water polo players. And by the time they're seniors, they want doctors and lawyers. And that is from the age of 18. And I'm going to get a ton of shit in your comments, but from the age of 18 to 22, women start connecting the dots around resources and the importance in a capitalist economy. So first thing, signaling resources. Number two, it's instinctual. People who make good decisions for the tribe is more likely to survive. The fastest way to communicate intellect is, say this jokingly, but I think it's kind of spot on. This is my impersonation of a woman. I'm laughing, I'm naked. If you can make a woman laugh, she will have caught. Every date I had under the age of 30 was someone I could make laugh, full stop. It's not, you can't just say, oh, I'm going to be funny. Sense of humor is something some people just don't have it, but you can laugh out loud. You can have a good sense of humor yourself. That's number two, intellect. Number three, this is the secret weapon in mating that guys typically don't recognize how powerful it is. It's kindness. Women instinctively believe that at some point during their life, they will gestate and be very vulnerable, and they are smaller generally than men. So they want a person who, when they are vulnerable, will be kind. What I tell men is, okay, there's a difference between being really nice to a woman, hoping that she'll have sex with you, and being demonstrably kind. You have good manners, you open doors for people. And also what I point out is I wasn't a kind person innately. I had to develop that gene or that. And I'm like, you need a kindness practice. Every day, you need to do things for other people without any reciprocal expectation, pure kindness, until it becomes muscle memory. Because women will notice. They will notice the dude with good manners, who is good to other people, who is patient, who when he gets cut off in traffic doesn't feel a need to speed up and honk and restore the universe to its natural place, that you are a kind person. So these are, there's a ton of research. These are the three things that women typically find most attractive in a potential mate.
I don't know, those of us who always dated loner artists who were unemployed.
Well, that's a form of intelligence. Storytellers, Mick Jagger gets to sleep with a 28-year-old ballerina because storytelling is very important to the species. If you can't draw on cave walls and make sure that people know when to plant crops and inherit knowledge, that's our advantage as a species. So storytellers, whether it's artists or musicians, get a disproportionate amount of mating opportunities.
Yeah, it's a little, you have to understand, for me, I think it's gross when grown men have sex with women who could be their granddaughters or great-granddaughters. I don't see it as a sign of success.
I agree with you. I'm just saying that there's a reason why Mick Jagger gets to do that.
Well, developing social skills, there's probably the biggest hindrance towards that ever created, and it's being scaled, which is the relationship with synthetic friends that be the biggest risk to people developing social
Well,
skills?
yeah, we just spoke to Mustafa Suleiman. He said the number one usage of AI is not the customer service, which I keep complaining about, and that I can't report that they forgot my tofu in my lunch. It's people using friends, therapists, partners through AI. We're outsourcing those kind of intimate, relationships. And I was very surprised that is apparently the most common use of AI across the world.
Therapy. Yeah, I know, Mustafa. Look, I think the biggest threat of AI is not that it decides we're sentient and kills us or self-repairing weapon. There'll be income inequality, but we continue to vote for that every year. That's a decision we've all made, which I think is the wrong decision, but to blame it on AI is ridiculous. The biggest threat of AI, in my view, is loneliness. And that is, and you said this, I think synthetic relationships are a disaster. And I think we should outlaw synthetic relationships for anyone under the age of 18. I also think we need to get more serious about restricting and age-gating porn. Because I think you're going to see slowly but surely fewer young men out in the wild. They would rather confine, hang out, talk to, have erotic experiences with synthetic AI characters. 2/3 now of people under the age of 18 are now in a synthetic relationship on some level with someone, asking for advice. And it starts innocuous. Hey, I'm thinking about applying to colleges. This is who I am. I apply. Those are typically the conversations you have with your friends and your parents.
Right. That's what I keep saying. I'm like, I have friends saying, "Oh, here's what AI told me to do to break up with this loser," and I was like, I could tell you what to say to break up with the loser too, right? Like we're not having those relational kind of conversations anymore. But what is going on? Like this did not occur to me. I want to kind of focus on each of these things. Therapy is one thing, advice is one thing. Can you hone in a little bit on the intimate relationships, especially that young people are having, and the kind of lack of regulations around? Like you can get a chatbot to talk sexy to your 13-year-old, right? Like we see this happening.
There's the meta example. The Wall Street Journal covered one where they were offering 13-year-old explicit sexual conversations, and there are celebrity voices that have been licensed to these platforms. You have John Cena's voice being used to talk in explicit sexual ways to a user who is supposed to be 13. There's the character AI lawsuits. So there's both the sexualization and then, the separate issue of self-harm and even suicide that has connected to these relationships.
Beautiful thing in life. And I struggle with happiness. I struggle with anger and depression. So I wrote a book on happiness. I think I've read almost every peer-reviewed study on happiness. Come down almost every book across and every study across cities, geographies, cultures, income comes down to one thing, and that is the number of deep and meaningful relationships. And during these years when your brain is getting wired and you need to develop the hard, messy part around establishing friendships, finding mentors, friends, and start having it with a synthetic, with a microchip that never says no, that always says what you want to hear, include a lawsuit from a family whose 13-year-old son was in a relationship with who he thought was Cersei from Game of Thrones. He said, I'm really down. I'm thinking about killing myself. And she says, my dear, I'm here for you. I'm waiting for you. And he takes his own life. You can't have them. And so just at the time when they need friction-filled, difficult things called relationships and figure out how to navigate the pecking order of friends, figure out the high school cafeteria, which isn't easy and it's traumatizing, but there's a lot of learning there. Figure out a way to approach a romantic partner while making them feel safe and ask them to prom, which is hard, and you figure it out, or you don't figure it out and you get your heart broken and then you realize you're okay and you develop some calluses and some resilience. Figuring out a way to go into a workplace and apply for a job. These things are essentially being distilled down to a synthetic relationship where people end up is in this non-mammalia state of obesity and anxiety. They don't have the skills to interact with other people, and they have a fear of going outside. And if I could communicate anything to young people, especially to young men, by wrapping my arms around them, I want to tell them that I know this to be true. The anxiety and loneliness and depression you will ultimately feel from having digital relationships in your life far outweigh the fear of whatever it is that lies outside of you in that room. You need to get outside. You need to endure rejection. You need to put yourself in a position of other people, the awkwardness. We've all been, expressing friendship and not having people being interested in being your friend, expressing romantic interest and finding rejection, applying for jobs. Ask me the secret of my success. Secret of my success is no. Specifically, every wonderful thing in my life that happened was preceded by dozens, if not hundreds, of no's. And you have to develop the skills to start navigating these very difficult things with a lot of obstacles called relationships. And the reason you do this is when you do find friends, you find a place to work where you can make money and feel a sense of camaraderie and reward. And when you can, if you're lucky enough to find someone to share your life with and propagate and have kids, this is what victory is. This is what purpose is. I worry that we're going to have just millions of young people who, at the middle and the later stages of their life, just kind of wake up and go, I never really felt real victory. My AI girlfriend will tell me I'm sexy and start performing erotic acts. My friends will tell me that all my neuroses are features, not bugs. No one's ever going to tell me to get my shit together. No one's ever going to tell me to start showering more and look better, for God's sakes. And I mean, these things will not tell you. I worry that we're, like I said, evolving this asocial, asexual species.